Another hits jam from wipeloaded.com.
As a community of scholars, of students, of ordinary people, of alumni, we re-establish our place in the world. And I think part of our place in the world is right here in Ghana. Here, more broadly, in Africa, what we are about as a university is something we refer to as social purpose. We're intense in our research, and to give you an idea of that intensity, a number that I never tire of mentioning is that the top university for life science research in the whole of the UK is Dundee. This year, last year, for 14 years in succession. So when we apply life science research to the huge problems of humankind, to the problems that we face here in Ghana, in Africa, and more generally, it is something that my colleagues, like Ian, and his colleague here, Dorothy, have spent so much of their life contributing to. So that social purpose, that making a difference in the world, that standing up and being recognized for our place in the world, led us to the launch of an Africa initiative just a few months ago. And we're launching that across a number of countries in Africa. Of course, you all think Ghana is number one, but for the launch of this initiative, you're number two. So we kicked off with the launch of this initiative in Malawi. Malawi is a country that has many, many links over many generations to Scotland, and it has some real challenges. We put this under the framework of something called the Blantyre Declaration. And the Blantyre Declaration is a statement of how we will work together in equitable partnerships, in partnerships as friends, in partnerships as equals, in co-delivery, co-design, and together meeting the challenges that face us in humankind. So here I am for the second step in that journey, and certainly no less important a step. And that's to initiate work creating an African hub here in Ghana for drug discovery and drug development, for medicines for Africa, developed in Africa for Africans. And that's our ambition, is together with our colleagues across Ghana and beyond, to create a drug development hub that brings that to fruition. And we have here in the audience our funding colleagues as well as colleagues in that wonderful journey. So it's not a big ask, but it's important that together we come together on that journey. And we are using these Africa lectures, this is the second of these wonderful lectures from noted African leaders, to inspire us on that journey, here in Ghana, and also to my colleagues tuning into us in Dundee. So hello Dundee. I promise you, even although Dundee is the sunniest city in Scotland, it's a lot warmer here. We'll send you some positive vibes. So that's what we're about. That's what the university is about. That's what our Africa initiative is about. That's what our ambition is here in Ghana is about. It's enough from me. I'm going to pass over to the experts, the people of who I'm in awe, and we will have two speakers in rapid succession. First of all, Dorothy Yeboah Manu. Dorothy, of course, is the director of the Gucci Memorial Institute of Medical Research, and visiting that today, it was incredibly inspiring. And Dorothy will kick us off and then pass to my own colleague in Dundee, Professor Ian Gilbert. And together, they will take us on the journey that we are on. So please join me in welcoming Dorothy Yeboah Manu.
Thank you, Ian. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers of this Dundee African Lecture Series for giving me this platform to speak on a very important subject. As a microbiologist, this is very, very crucial to me, and it's a subject that we need to speak about. For the purpose of the gathering here, I'll let my lecture be as lay as possible so that everyone will take something home. The topic this evening for discussion is antimicrobial resistance, the silent pandemic, the urgent need for new drugs. Please, is it? And the light should be off. The lights off.
Technology wonderful. We're getting out of seconds.
And what to put the light off? So what do you do? There's an issue with the... But we need to put the lights off because that is what can I see. It's okay.
Go. It's going to work.
So,
Okay, folks, second time lucky. Once again, welcome, Dorothy. Over to you.
yeah. So, as I indicated earlier, the topic for this lecture is antimicrobial resistance, the silent pandemic, urgent need for new drugs. It is, yeah. So mankind and pathogens, that is microorganisms that cause infectious disease, share a long history. In fact, there are various writings in literature that shows that as old as man, infectious disease has been old. There are several inscriptions in the Bible. We remember the famous soldier Naaman's story of leprosy, showing that even in the biblical era, infectious disease existed. Of course, there are also several archaeological writings. For example, if you look at this writing that was taken from the Museum of the Assyrian King, it says, the patient coughs frequently. His sputum is thick and sometimes contains blood. His breathing is like a flute. His skin is cold, but his feet are hot. These are very clear writings about the symptoms of tuberculosis, indicating that even 600 BC, TB was there. And of course, in addition to TB and leprosy, there are various also writings about the Yersinia plague and HBV infections that existed several years ago. When we come to modern day, the world has also have series of various outbreaks, most of them from viral diseases. We've had Nipah, we've had Zika, and we've had Lassa fever, and of course, the current pandemic, the COVID-19, indicating that human beings have battling infectious diseases since the existence of humans. The same ways that human beings have fought infections, also there are various indications that in the quest for humans to have remedies for these infectious diseases also dates back. There are several also writings again in the Bible that indicates that human beings also have used several remedies. We hear of the fig tree whereby Isaiah promised, indicated to the king Hezekiah when he was very ill and he was afraid to die, he was asked to use fig tree, indicating that even archaeologically and antiquity as ever, human beings have also looked for remedies to solve infectious disease. Bloodletting for TB is also seen within several archaeological writings. And of course, if you go to some archaeological findings, we see bones that are very, very yellowish, as we can see at the last plate, indicating that probably within those years, there was something that looks like tetracycline that was being used to treat antimicrobial diseases. However, modern day antibiotics started with the famous Paul Ehrlich, who is accredited as the father of modern day pharmacology, who started with the theory of selective toxicity and with this idea that since microorganisms can be selectively stained by various things that we use under the microscope to figure them, then we could also develop medicines that will act like a magic bullet that will go into the human being and will only work on the microorganism without infecting human beings. Several things were tried, some including stains and salvage, but the main modern day antibiotics started with a interestingly a Scottish bacteriologist who accidentally saw that his plate was being consumed. A plate of Staphylococcus aureus was being consumed by a fungus, and he then extracted this fungus juice, and this fungus juice was named penicillin. With the discovery of penicillin, I'm sure at that time, man thought that they've overcome the problem of microbial infection. Nevertheless, the one who discovered penicillin had this to tell us. he said that he have observed that it is not difficult to develop resistant microorganisms in the laboratory. He realized that if you expose them to sublethal doses, they quickly change their DNA structure and become resistant to doses that previously could kill them. And he said that he believes that one day penicillin will be found on the shops and human beings would dose themselves with sub doses, and that could lead to resistant pathogens. And I think if I'd been today in Ghana, would have said he's a seer or a prophet. But this is what has really, really happened, such that now most pathogens are becoming resistant. That with some infections, we have total drug resistance, and treatable diseases are becoming untreatable. So, not long after he discovered, unfortunately it's difficult to point, but if you read the slide there, you could see that not long after he discovered penicillin, resistant strains were found. And following that, various medications that has been produced or discovered or has also have resistance strains evolving along the pipeline, to the extent that I'm just going to use a few diseases to give you an example of why we think that now antimicrobial resistance is a silent pandemic. If you look at the COVID that came, the world round, but I will show you that, in fact, what we have with antimicrobial resistance is more than what we saw in COVID. Take tuberculosis. And you could see from the map that when someone has TB, the main medication for TB is isoniazid and rifampicin. And this medication are taken for 6 months. And when someone is resistant to these two, then the likelihood that this patient will be cured by the first anti-TB medication is reduced. And if you look at the map that we show, you see that the whole world, every part of the world, there is the presence of drug-resistant TB. And these ones who are MDR strains, it's that they have to be treated with second line. And when we are treated with second line, it comes with several side effects, and it also comes with reduction in the success of treatment. Is this different from West Africa? This is not different. And I just drew a line to show various time points where studies have been done. You could see that within the first 2008 studies that we did, even at Noguchi, and also within the West African Network for Tuberculosis, we didn't find any MDR case or neither second-line anti-TB drug resistance. However, in 2016, a study that was done, that is where you have the red dot in 2016, across West Africa, indicated the presence of not only MDR, but a lot of also resistance against the second anti-TB drugs. And when we are resistant to just one of the classes, we call the pre-XDR. And at that time, most of the ones that we found were what we called pre-XDR because they were resistant to just one of the classes of the second anti-TB drugs. However, work that we did at the Institute by my own group in 2018 then came up with the first evidence of patients who are not just MDR, but even the two main anti-TB second-line drugs, which then we call XDR cases, were then present in Ghana. And over the years, we are seeing more XDR in Ghana, which is now threatening TB, which is a treatable disease, becoming untreatable. And if you see the next map that I'll show, this is a map of Ghana and the work that we are doing with the National TB Control Program. You see that drug-resistant strains of TB are all over the country. And the work that we just published with Isaac leading it, you could see that within Ghana, we identified several MDRs, several period XDR, and also the presence of extensive drug resistance. And individuals infected with this extensive drug resistance have very, very slim success in terms of drug treatment. And most of them also, the side effects are quite unbearable. Is it only with TB when it comes to the drug resistance with the bacteria? No, but even with other bacteria, we'll see more. This is the global map and 2019 showing the the amount of prevalence of drug resistance in various regions. And you could see that within Western Africa, for example, some of the isolates, we have 80% drug resistance. And so such a person will go to hospital, they will isolate, they will think that this is typhoid fever, this is UTI, and the patient will be treated with the normal antibiotics that we know, but these patients will not cure. And then we will start reading meanings. Why is it that this person is suffering from the usual diseases, and we know these are the usual medication that we give to them, but they hardly respond to, because of the presence of drug resistance. And well, yeah. And currently, the problem of AMR is it's bigger than the problem of HIV. It is bigger than the problem of malaria, but we hardly speak. We are always talking about HIV. There are a lot of education about malaria, but you hardly hear a lot of education about antimicrobial resistance. But if you look at the world map, you see that the problem of antimicrobial resistance is even bigger than HIV, and is even bigger than malaria. And you go to the next. Sorry. And if you go, wow. And the next one shows mortality of as a result of AMR. And if you look at 2019, almost 5 million persons died as a result of AMR. And if you look at the figure there, the hardest hit region in the world, as expected, is Africa. And within Africa, the most affected is West Africa. You could see that West Africa is the first bar, the green bar, the longest green bar. And you could see that the problem of West Africa is really, really huge, especially with countries like Nigeria. That's quite a number of them are resistant to several of the available medications. And it is projected that by 2050, wow. So this is the projections of how many people would die as a result of antimicrobial resistance if nothing is done about this. And compare this, even in 2019, almost 5 million people died as a result of antimicrobial resistance. Compare this to COVID, the estimated death was 3.3 million globally, but the actual death was 1.8. And the West Africa Ebola virus deaths were 11,000. So these are nothing compared to the issue of antimicrobial resistance. Even though so many people are dying as a result of resistance to antibiotics, there is not much urgency, even though there's some funding, but there's not much discussion around the problem of antimicrobial resistance as one will anticipate will happen. Is this resistance, normally when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, people think it's only limited to bacteria, but this is not only limited to bacteria. We have problems with malaria as, wow. And I just want to show to you also work that has been done in Ghana by Dr. Beverly Ajuri and her team on antimicrobial resistance. And you could see that in Ghana, we can have as many as 70% or more of gram-negative bacteria found to be extended spectrum bacteria beta-lactamases. What this means, the ESBLs means, is that most of the our penicillins that we have on the market, when people suffer from some of the gram-negative bacteria diseases such as typhoid fever and the rest, they may not respond to the antimicrobial. And what is worrying is that from their work, they find a lot of, because the work is done in One Health manner, they found a lot of antibiotic residues in a lot of animal products, such as pork or chicken. And this is worrying. And then samples that they collected with the bacteria they isolated from both humans and clinical isolates, they realized that when we do genomic analysis, as you can see by the phylogenetic tree that has been plotted over there, you see some clustering between humans resistant strains and animal resistant strains. And what is of concern is the one in the red, where we see a very close relationship between Staphylococcus aureus isolated from goats and that of humans, showing zoonotic transmission of drug-resistant strain between goats and animal. And this is saying that then to fight the problem of antimicrobial resistance needs a multidisciplinary approach, because the clinician, the farmer, and all the policymakers need to sit and look at in terms of how we use antimicrobials in animal feed. This is of concern. Then we look at, let us look at antimalarials as well. And you could see the global map showing that not only chloroquine resistance, but we see even resistance even in the current medication in use, that's artemisinin. We see resistant strains approaching, and we see a lot of K13 markers that are indication of resistance all over in the next, where we see the map with the blue dots. You see that across the world, there's K13 mutations seen across the whole world. This is a cause for worry. And when we come to Ghana, you can see that we summarize several studies across different years, and you could see that we could find mutations, indication, or genetic markers, indication of drug resistance for several antimalarials across different time points. And what for me is concern is towards the end, you see that even in Ghana, we have the genetic marker for resistance to the ACTs, and this is really, really a cause for concern. The other side of the map, which is also concerned, is that if you look at the blue is the wild type, that's what is naturally we expect the genome to be. And the red is the mutate, the one that has changes. And you can see that in some of the communities, the mutation of the changed genes are sort of becoming fixed compared to what we expect to be. And this means that drug resistance is becoming fixed within the Ghanaian community against malaria. This is a cause that we see that there's outbreak, and we need to work at it. We need to speak about it, and we need to find solutions to these outbreaks within our communities. HIV. This is also we see that HIV drug resistance is also globally. But then look at the map there. If you look at the first one, is for Southern Africa, then Western Africa, and then Asia. And you can see that the African drug resistance, there's a sharp rise between within the 1996 to 2026. You see the African graphs, you can see that there's a sharp rise, and this is really, really, really of importance to us to speak about drug resistance, because if we don't take care, then it means that treatable diseases are becoming untreatable. And this is not different for work that has been done in Ghana. Oh, wow. This is led by Dr. Evelyn Bonin from the virology department, also looking at drug resistant HIV, and he found resistant markers both in experience, that those who have been on antiretroviral treatment for a long time, as well as those who are even new, or what we call the naive individuals. It means that there's transmission of resistance from individuals who have been infected for a long time to new ones, and this is sort of making the problem of drug resistance a burden for the whole world. So the thing is, can we not do anything about it? There is something that we can do about it. And for us to do something about it, then we need to understand the mechanisms and what is driving this drug resistance. And so what is driving the resistance is that there's our wash, that is our sanitation is a problem. We need to improve sanitation. What is driving it is that there's a misuse and abuse of antibiotics. There's lack of knowledge, and so people take medication and they are not able to comply. And this is leading to selection of those resistant markers. And some of the resistant markers are transferred from the environment to the pathogen. Some of them too, it is because they are exposed to the sublethal concentrations, they allows changes within the genome, and that leads to the bacteria now either they overproduce the same target, or sometimes then the bacteria, they are not able to bind properly, the medication is not able to bind properly to the drug target. And since they are not able to bind properly to the drug target, they are not able to make the, bring about the effect that it has to do. That sometimes because of the sublethal concentration and the mutation that occurs, once you put the medication in, the germ is able to do what? Pump out the medication. All these are all contributing to the problem of drug resistance. So what can we do? There are a lot that we can do about it. We need to, among other things for scientists, we need to do a lot of education. But the way the current drug classes are all becoming not effective, for us as a team, one of the things that we think must be done is that there is an urgent need to develop new medication. Why are we saying that? If you look at the drug development pipeline, you could see that even though drug resistance it's exploding, but the rate at which new medications or new drugs are coming out, especially new classes, are very, very slim. And within Ghana, we think there is potential. Why are we saying this? There is potential. If you go to PubMed or you go to the search engines, you see a lot of publications in Ghana that people are working at various drug discovery pipeline. However, this work is not coordinated, and that we think that for us to make impact in the drug discovery arena, we need to come together as a team to work together, leverage on our capabilities, and through that, we can make a lot of impact. And that brings us to our project that is establishing a drug discovery hub in Ghana. This project, I will end here, is led from Noguchi, but it's a collaboration between Noguchi, Chemistry Department, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. For this, I will leave here whilst I give the floor to Ian to continue. Thank you very much.
Professor Dorothy, thank you so much for that tour de force and explaining to all of us the significance of AMR. Certainly, as a non-expert, I was completely taken aback by the mortality rate because we hear of so many diseases, but not that AMR has such an impact, and shows the importance of the work of the team in Dundee and Ghana on that. So now on to the head of the Drug Discovery Unit at the University of Dundee, Professor Ian Gilbert.
Very much, Dorothy, for your talk and for the introduction to the problems of drug resistance, and thank you, Ian, for the invitation to speak today. So I'm going to sort of follow on from where Dorothy left off. So infectious neglected diseases are a major problem in Africa. So Dorothy's talked really about antibacterials, and bacterial infections are a major problem in Africa. There are lots of other diseases that are problems, like tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, malaria, and these cause huge numbers of death. But there are a lot of other diseases that are also a major problem within Africa, so things like schistosomiasis and yellow fever, African trypanosomiasis. So these are all diseases which cause huge amounts of death. So if you look on the left-hand side of the slide, it shows the deaths from all these diseases. And every year, something around about 1.5 million people die from TB. But not only do they cause large amounts of death and mortality, they also cause lots of chronic ill health. Yeah. Okay, they also cause chronic ill health. And that's shown by what's called these DALYs, or disability adjusted life years, which are shown on the right hand side of the slide. And if you look what's shown in red, this shows what the impact is in Africa. So Africa is a lot more, is very heavily impacted by all these neglected infectious diseases. So as Dorothy has said, that drug resistance is a major problem, particularly affecting sub-Saharan Africa, which is shown in green on the slide. And this is bacteria resistance to antibiotics is roughly 5 million deaths a year. And that's really obviously a major problem that's only going to grow. But there's also a problem in many parts of the world, and particularly Africa, in terms of access to antibiotics. So while there's big problems with drug resistance, there's also a problem with people not having access to the antibiotics that could potentially save lives, and that needs to be kept in mind as well. So to give you an idea of the impact of infectious diseases, this is something that was taken from the World Health Statistics. So in purple is shown deaths from communicable diseases, so infectious diseases and maternal and perinatal conditions. And in blue is shown deaths from non-communicable diseases, things like cancer and cardiovascular diseases. And you can see that in Africa, still the main cause of death is from these communicable diseases, whereas in Europe, they have a much smaller impact. So showing again the high burden of diseases in Africa. So malaria, I want to focus on malaria as a particular problem in Africa and Ghana. And in 2020, there were approximately 240 million cases of malaria, which led to about 630,000 deaths. And most of the deaths in malaria are amongst children under the age of 5 and pregnant women. And most of those deaths also occur in sub-Saharan Africa. And all along, malaria is a treatable disease and preventable. And if you look at the figures, there were 14 million more cases of malaria in 2020 than 2019, and more deaths. So we're going in the wrong direction with malaria, and this graph shows the effects. So from about 2000 to 2014, there was a steady decline in mortality to malaria. And what the global technical survey or the projections for reducing the level of mortality of malaria is shown in green, but what's actually happened is the blue line. So you can see that since 2014-15, the number of malaria cases, or the mortality due to malaria rather, has, if anything, increased. So this is obviously very worrying. And as Dorothy highlighted, resistance to malaria is a growing problem. So the main drug used to treat malaria are artemisinin combination therapies. And those are, resistance to this was first of all detected in Southeast Asia, but it's now widespread in Africa, where the majority of malaria cases are. So we need to develop new drugs to treat malaria. And this is where the work that we're doing in Dundee and is going on in Ghana is really important. So clearly we want to eliminate and eventually eradicate malaria. And to do this, we need new drugs. And we need a number of different new drugs. So first of all, there's a problem of drug resistance, which Dorothy and myself have both talked about. So we need to have drugs that work by different mechanisms of action. And something that would really make a clinical benefit is a single-dose treatment for malaria. So the current treatment is 3 daily doses, three doses, one for each in 3 days. If we could have a single-dose treatment, it would make a major improvement. So most of the people who get malaria are children under the age of 5 and pregnant women. So what we need are drugs that are suitable for those populations and are safe for children and for pregnant women. And also, we really want to eliminate malaria altogether. Now, we need new drugs to treat other different ways of looking and treating malaria. So there's a type of malaria called relapsing malaria or vivax malaria, and we need new drugs to treat that. And we need new drugs that prevent transmission of malaria. So when somebody's been treated for malaria, often there are still infective parasites in the bloodstream that can last for weeks, so that person can still potentially transmit malaria to another person. And we want drugs that are safe then to give for chemoprotection to stop people getting malaria in the first place, and that's particularly for pregnant women and children under the age of 5. So there's a lot of work to be done. So what are we doing in looking at infectious diseases? So first of all, we do need new drugs. So we need new medicines because many of the current diseases, they're not adequate medicines or there's drug resistance. We often need to understand the biology of these diseases. A lot of these diseases, there's little known about the biology, and that really helps to the drug discovery process if we understand the biology. We can't do drug discovery on our own. Nobody can do drug discovery on our own. We need to work together. And there's some excellent examples of that. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have developed a malaria drug discovery accelerator and a tuberculosis drug discovery accelerator. And those bring together scientists from all over the world to work on developing drugs for malaria and tuberculosis. And this is a really powerful way to do drug discovery. And a lot of these diseases are really focused in lower and middle income countries. So we need to develop drug discovery capability and capacity in lower and middle income countries. And just to sort of give you a background, drug discovery is not easy, and this is a few sort of figures. So a typical drug discovery program, if we were to start it today in 2023, we'd be lucky to have a drug. It would take 15 to 20 years potentially to have a drug. So you might be looking for another 15 years before we had a drug that's registered to use. It's a very depressing figure but most drug discovery projects fail. So if you look at those that start from the very beginning that actually get through to the end, it's probably somewhere between 1% and 5%. It depends how you count it. So not many drug discovery projects get to the end. And then another depressing figure is it costs a lot of money. I mean, it's very difficult to get a precise figure, and it depends on the disease. But if you balance up all the successful projects and the unsuccessful projects, the cost per project is it runs into potentially billions of dollars. So it's a very expensive business. So a little bit about what we're doing in Dundee. So for those of you that don't know, Dundee is on the east coast of Scotland. It's about an hour's drive north of Edinburgh. So it's home to a boat called the Discovery, and we like to call ourselves the City of Discovery. So the Discovery was the boat that Scott sailed to the Antarctic, and it's pictured there in front of a new museum in Dundee, the V&A Museum. And hiding at the bottom is a picture which, at the front of that picture, the blue and white building is where the School of Life Sciences and the Drug Discovery Unit. So we work we've developed a drug discovery unit which we started in 2006, and most of the work that we do is focused on developing drugs for infectious diseases. So we've got programs against malaria, cryptosporidiosis, schistosomiasis, tuberculosis, the kinetoplastid diseases, which are Chagas disease, which is a South American disease, and leishmaniasis, and COVID-19. And we also have a group that looks at a much wider range of diseases such as oncology and neurodegeneration. So we have a large group of scientists, and as Dorothy said, you need to work together as a multidisciplinary. So we've got biochemists and cell biologists, we've got chemists, we've got people who do structural biology, we've got people who do drug metabolism and pharmacokinetics. And we're now about 125 scientists, and we work together with basic scientists who understand the disease to develop candidate molecules which we can then partner with pharmaceutical companies or product development partners. So, and we're starting to work with scientists in Ghana. So there's scientists in Ghana who are looking at doing drug discovery So at the different universities at KNUST in Kumasi, at the University of Cape Coast, here at the University of Ghana in Accra, and at the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ho. So we've been working together for about the past 4 to 5 years. So some of the activities that have been ongoing, many have been disrupted a little bit by COVID, but we've managed to make progress. So we've developed a number of networking groups to bring scientists together. So we've developed networking groups in chemistry and pathogen biology and natural products and analytical chemistry. We've done training courses. So there's been training courses that have been done online and in person. We've developed between us and the University of Ghana a workshop on looking at natural products research. And we've had a number of scientists, about 6 I think, that have come from Ghana and have spent time in Dundee. And we've had people from MSD who in September gave a number of training courses across Ghana. We've been working with people in the University of Ghana and KNUST to develop a natural products database, and we've helped to install equipment. So currently one of my colleagues is trying to install a mass spectrometer in the University of Ghana. So we also wanted to do drug discovery projects. So we started off with a project with seed funding from the University of Dundee GCRF fund, and that enabled us to start doing some anti-malarial drug discovery at the University of Ghana. And then about a year ago, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have generously stepped in and provided funding. And this has provided funding for an exciting anti-malarial project. So there's parasite screening that's done at the Gucci Institute at the University of Ghana. There's chemistry being done at the University of Ghana, and then we're developing, at KNUST we're developing pharmacokinetics. So pharmacokinetics is seeing how compounds behave in the body. So we need to make sure that those compounds are soluble, that they can, you can take them as an oral tablet, that they're metabolically stable, and that's something that's starting to develop at KNUST. And this work is done in collaboration with lots of people. So it's funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We've got help from Medicines and Malaria Venture, H3D, which is in South Africa, and also from the University of Dundee. And about in June, we had a launch meeting, and there's a picture of a banner and some of us who were at that launch meeting. And I think what drug discovery can provide lots of things for Ghana. So I've got drug discovery in blue in the center, but by doing this drug discovery program, the anti-malarial program, there's an opportunity to develop infrastructure within Ghana. It's providing an environment for people to develop as scientists. One thing that would be really good is to develop spin-out companies to enhance the local infrastructure. There's good possibilities of doing collaborations with other countries within the West African region, and provides education and training. And ultimately, of course, we really want, and what we passionately want, is to get new drugs for endemic diseases such as malaria. And that's something we're really working hard to achieve, and the scientists in Ghana are also trying to achieve, and hopefully by working together we can accelerate these things. So I'd like to finish by acknowledging a large number of people who've been involved in this work. So by way of acknowledgement, there was a paper that was written by a number of people from across the different universities in Ghana. So it was led by Richard and Weru and Dorothy, and had all these scientists from different universities across Ghana, and wrote an article that was published last year on drug discovery research in Ghana and the challenges, current efforts, and the way forward. It's sort of mapping out some of the challenges, but some of the positive ways that we can go forward with drug discovery. and to acknowledge some of the other people. So Darren, who's my colleague, who's trying to get the mass spec up and running even as we speak, probably. People from Dundee who've been helping with training, Lauren and Gary. People from the Gates Foundation who've not only funded this, but have put a lot of time and effort into helping the work go forward. So Peter, Warner and Gang, Louis, who are in the audience, James Duffy from MMV, and Miles Siegel, who's from a small company in the US, who's been really helping with mentoring, and also those who've funded this work. So Wellcome, who's funded the Wellcome Center, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then people like MMV, H3D. And I'd like to thank you for listening.
Professor Ian, thank you so much for that inspiring talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can be under no doubt whatsoever about the size of the problem presented by AMR and how great the challenge is to try and find a solution. But I think in Professor Dorothy and in Professor Ian, we have such fantastic champions who are dedicating their careers to try and make this a reality. So once again, please can we show our appreciation to Professor Dorothy and Professor Ian. So now it is the time for people online or for you in the audience to ask questions of our panel. So we'll invite back Professor Dorothy, Professor Ian, and also two other members of the Dundee team, Professor Wendy Alexander, who's our Vice Principal International, and Professor Kim Dale, who's our Assistant Vice Principal International. Right. So I know we've got different constituencies in the audience. We've got many of our funders who've come here. We've got many representatives from the Ngauchi Institute and also from the University of Ghana. So who would like to ask the first question? Any volunteers? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good evening panel, good evening everybody. Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. My name is Richard Sandel. I'm from the British High Commission here in Ghana. I'm the Deputy Director for Development Programmes. We were amazed to discover last year that there are about 120 UK government-funded programmes doing science and research in partnerships in Ghana, 120. If we'd have asked us to guess, we would have guessed something less than a tenth of that, I think. A lot of these are quite short term. These are government grants from BAYS, our Department for Business, and for our Department for Environment, DEFRA, as well as from my own department, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. They're quite short term. And what really strikes me about this partnership, this wonderful partnership that you're establishing, is you're thinking long term and you're taking a long term punt. This isn't just a bit of research or a conversation or a partnership. This is something serious that could be lasting 10, 15, 20 years, which I think is exceptional. I've got two bits of advice that I'd like to hear from you, or two questions about advice. One is, what would you recommend to all those other British universities thinking about working in Ghana and how to change their short-term programs into maybe longer-term partnerships? And what's your advice for the British High Commission about how to make the most of all of the science that's going on between our two countries? Thank you.
As you can see, everyone looks towards the end for a response. Let me have a go, and then perhaps other colleagues will want to come in. Yeah, we're interacting with each other here, Peter. I've been a lifelong Jimi Hendrix fan, but it doesn't always work when I'm on the microphone. Well, I think you've got it, which is long-term longevity partnership. I think what's, I hope, different, or at least well meant from the University of Dundee, is what I said at the very beginning. Equitable long-term partnerships together, meaningful partnerships together to address common problems, common causes. I mean, AMRs, what was the number? 4.8 million deaths. AMRs is a problem for every single person, every individual on the planet. and not just individuals, so the One Health are animals as well, and looking at zoonotic diseases causing more and more problems, and antimicrobial resistance is deeply problematic. So one, be in it for a long term. And I think that's easy to say. I think it's harder to do. And the reason that I'm here is to say that for our university, we mean it for the long term. So my advice to other universities, and we're not alone, other universities are in long-term commitments too, is you use the term place your bets. Well, create that relationship and recognise that these relationships have their ups and downs, but you've got to be in it for the long term. So that's one. Secondly, in terms of advice to the British High Commission, I think the fact that you know there are, what was the number, 120 UK government-funded projects, research projects or engagement projects going on in Ghana is a very, very good start. And I guess I would encourage you to think about how do these projects come together as more than just a series of individual interventions into, well, actually, in our relationship as two countries, not just as institutions, how do we create that partnership and that focus going forward? And I know the British High Commission thinks in these terms. As I bore my colleagues very often, there's only one us, and we are all it. So I think that's my message. Take that long-term view, which always has challenges with our political masters. But I think that's got to be the message from all of us. I don't know if colleagues have anything to add.
I think I want to contribute to see how we came together. And I think what helped us was the networking grants, which we got from the British government also. So the network grant helped us to map out capabilities in country. And based on that capabilities, we came together as people within a country having a problem, and then we found out how do we address the problem. And then we got there. Of course, we did this with a UK partner, and then we started talking to possible funders. And that's how this came about. So we first got a network grant. We look at capabilities across the country, map up who is doing what, call each one together, and then we sat down, and then after that, we started talking about how do we move forward. I think that is very, very crucial in this relationship. Thank you.
I'd agree with Dorothy. The networking grant, which wasn't a large amount of money, but really helped us to get people talking to each other. And I think coming back to what Ian was saying about longevity, I think it's really important to, obviously these are long-term problems that there's no quick fix for. Particularly drug discovery is a long-term activity, as I indicated. But actually, I think being able to build up relationships and working relationships, to be able to exchange students and staff is really important, and getting to know each other. And that's not something that you turn on for 3 months and then move away from. And I think you get much more value if you can develop those relationships where you can each understand each other's needs, if you see what I mean, and how to tackle those problems.
Just introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Juliet Agbeibo from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, GIMPA. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you very much especially for the very real practical efforts you are putting into addressing AMR. I'm just wondering what the rest of us who are not scientists can do to help, whether in our professional capacities as, say, accountants, lawyers, etc., or even in our capacities as just ordinary Ghanaians, whether there's, for example, any citizen science projects or something we can do to contribute towards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With this consortium, working from different institutions comes coordination is very crucial. And so we need this afternoon, we're talking about a coordination office. Of course, that doesn't have to be a scientist, and that should be someone with a managerial background. Of course, once scientists started talking, then IP and things coming in. And so definitely with this kind of collaboration that we are going through, I think we are having it. Definitely there is a place for the non-scientists, because drug discovery is not only by scientists, but equally important is in the area of antimicrobial resistance. There's a lot that non-scientists can do in terms of public education and public engagement. So there's something for the non-scientists to do as well. Thank you.
Slightly turning what you said on its head. I mean, I think another important thing that actually almost for the scientists is to explain what we're doing to the general public, because it's important that we can tell you what we're doing and the problems that, like Dorothy was saying, around antibacterial resistance, so that that the general public is also informed about some of the challenges.
One thing I could possibly add to that as well is that in the education sphere, so building that understanding and awareness from school-age children, right, and also building an excitement and enthusiasm about how they might be able to contribute in some of the ways that Dorothy's raised, but also in the context of an excitement about science, both boys and girls. Particularly, I'm passionate about sort of women, young girls generating an excitement about perhaps participating and entering into science careers. So, yeah, an understanding and awareness.
And their question is, has the work on vaccines to try and address COVID-19, are there any lessons to be learned from that sort of rapid development of vaccines that might impact on AMR vaccines? Thank you.
Please, the question.
So the questioner was reflecting on the development of vaccines for the COVID-19 virus and was wondering whether the work that took place on those, the way in which vaccines were rolled out, whether there's any developments that can impact the way in which we're developing AMR vaccines today.
I'll start with this. I'm not a vaccine expert, so I can't really comment in detail, but I mean, I think with all of these diseases that we mentioned, vaccines clearly are an important feature of developing things. But I think with all of these diseases, there's no one solution. We need vaccines, we need drugs for malaria, we need bed nets, we need insecticides. So we need to have a sort of a battery of different approaches. And clearly, there's been a lot of learnings from developing vaccines through COVID-19, and hopefully some of those developments can be used to develop new vaccines for other diseases.
Yes.
Thank you. So back to the floor.
Okay, my name is Derek Asunoba. I'm a clinical microbiologist at MDS Lancet Laboratories. The issue of AMR is actually a big issue, and some of us in the diagnostic industry are seeing it every day. You get a blood culture results, before releasing the report, the patient is dead. And this is not once, almost every week we get cases like that. Listening to the lectures, I'm like, what can people in the diagnostic sphere help in drug discovery? Thank you.
keep it for you. Let me start and then someone can. I think one, I would like to turn your question this way. What can those of us in the clinical microbiology do? And this comes with a rapid detection diagnostics. If you take tuberculosis, for example, a lot has been done with the invention of GenExpert. Previously, you just use microscopy. You have to wait for 2 months before, if the patient is not responding, then they will send a sample to the lab. But now at diagnosis, you know whether the patient is sensitive or resistant to the most potent medication, that is rifampicin. And now what some of us, after seeing the work that we've done, what we need to do more is also to develop additional rapid, like instead of just, and which is coming out soon, instead of just having resistance to just rifampicin, to have a diagnostic that will show resistant, rapid one, resistant to key additional medication. And that is what probably we need to hammer on. That if there will be rapid diagnosis, such that you have your salmonella, someone has typhoid fever, the moment you take the blood, you can quickly do DNA extraction. Within a few hours, you can tell the clinician that this patient will respond to this or that medication. And I think for clinical laboratory, this is really crucial. And that's what we should aim at.
I think your laboratories have a really valuable role in sort of plotting what new strains are arising and where the problem is. So, I think it's important for the scientists doing drug discovery to know what the resistance problems are and to have those isolates available for testing with new compounds that are being developed. So I think a knowledge of what's coming and what you're seeing is really critical.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for 2 more questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Fosuan Jules Abedi. I am a TA at the University of Ghana School of Biomedical and Allied Health Science in Kolebu. And my question will be, for some time now, or when we look the part of our world, Ghana here, there has been some kind of break, or there is always a break between the academic sector, the industrial sector, and then maybe when we need help from the government sector too, there's that kind of break. So most of the things in the academic field stays on the academic field. And then the industries do what they want. And then if you have to even look for assistance from the government, normally they will push so hard, but they too will have their own thing doing. And then during Professor Doherty's lecture, she made mention of a lot of publications on PubMed. And then you can see that there are good academic work done there. But the industries, or we can't correlate these things together to help forward what we are really learning. Maybe someone will be learning in the schools, but the expertise is on the field, the industrial part, where they should also help in teaching them so that they can get the idea right from the classroom to the industrial field. So if that should be an interest to this board, the correlation between these other sectors to forward drug development, are there any steps being put in place to help this? Thank you.
If I heard you well, please correct me. You want to see how we bridge the divide between academia, industry, and the real world, isn't it? Yeah, and I think this is a very important contributor, very key question. From Noguchi, I would say that this we are trying our best, especially bridging the research and the policy divide. So most of our work we do together with Ministry of Health and Ghana Health Service. And also we provide the platform for students to do their internship. Nevertheless, more needs to be done. And unfortunately, in country, there are not so many industries, but still we need to pursue, even globally, how do we make sure that we interact with the industry? And that's what this consortium it's about. Through this relationship, last year we had a relationship with Merck. We are talking to Merck, we are talking to funders, and I'm sure as time goes on, we'll see some of these coming to fruition. Thank you.
No, and it's a good point you raise. It is important to bridge those with, across academia, industry, government. Drug discovery is complicated. If we don't work together, we won't get there. So it's working together with everybody is important.
Thank you. I think next question over here.
Your presentation largely spoke to how the network currently is engaging academic partners towards seeing the drug development hub happen on the continent. However, very little has been spoken of on how engagement is happening with very key stakeholders like the government in creating the right environment to allow such a hub to thrive. I want to ask if currently there is nothing done in terms of engaging the government. What are your plans to making that happen? Secondly, I also want to ask, what is the hub or the network currently doing to leverage the works that have been done by other ecosystem players like the pharmaceutical industry that we have currently in Ghana? Because certainly much has been done from those groups of people. And again, we also have startups that are trying to develop and use emerging technologies that can accelerate the whole process of drug discovery. What are your plans for engaging them, and what, again, would you do with innovation players to allow you to maximize the effect of the technologies that are existing to drive the drug development agenda? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I agree with you that we indicated this network, it's about partnership to bring about drug discovery as a reality in the country. But you need to also be strategic in building your partnership. And so what we've done as a first step, well, after the mapping, we instead of starting straight to the government, we need to put our house in order. And to put our house in order, we started with academia. So last year, there was a meeting in Ghana which was hosted at the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research. The research, what we call the provinces for research and development from the various universities were all present. We had Eugene, NUS, UCC, we had from UHAS, we have from even Mampon, the director from Mampon. And so as a first step, we thought that we need to put our house in order as academia. And that's what we did last year. The next step now, we are engaging different funders. So within this visit, it's not only Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is the first funder. We have now other funders now coming. And then when we get that, then we can start now speaking to the government and other key players, because we can't start big, we need to start small, and once you get your ground solidified, then you can move to the next step. And we recognize other multidisciplinary nature of this, so we know the computational biology people. That's why if you listen to Ian's group, we've identified the different expertise that we need, and we have expertise groups that we are trying to sort of meet, and then they sort of come up with the agenda towards this drug discovery hub. So yes, we acknowledge the role of the government, but then we need to build this partnership gradually to make it effective. Thank you.
Great. I know there are many more questions, but I'm going to suggest that you raise those questions at the reception, which we're now going to have on the other side of the building, unless you want another question? So we will ask the questions across the way when we have a wonderful reception waiting for us. So let me thank all the members of our panel, in particular Professor Dorothy and Professor Ian, our champions for drug discovery.
Scared about coming here. I was not sure. I'd never been to Scotland before, and actually coming here and seeing what it was like and meeting people who are like me and meeting like professors who are willing to help, and even like students, other students, older students who were like just being really helpful. So I think I really made the best decision.
I do love the city. Like whenever I go to anywhere else in the UK, I'm always like, I can't wait to go back to Dundee just because of how much I like it here.
On the way to Scotland, I remember the scenery. Like the country was really beautiful, and like the cities, the buildings were very, old and ancient. That gave it like a really, ancient feel, gothic feel almost. I love the way Scotland is very diverse in terms of its topography. So you can go for like hill walks and climb mountains and do all kinds of things.
So moving away from Botswana, I found it easier to transition in living in the UK since it's like not too big over here. So I really like staying here.
When I first came here, like I remember getting in the taxi and just the taxi driver was so kind. Even when I got to my accommodation, when I needed help, everyone would just always offer help. So I've never found that anyone is rude or anything. It's always been really polite, really like welcoming.
The people here, like they made it really easy for me to adjust living here just because of how nice everybody was and how willing everybody was to help you like settle in.
Being an African in Dundee, so far it's been very normal.
At first I was really worried that I wouldn't meet a lot of other African students, but to my surprise there's quite a few of us. So I was able to make friends and people who are from my country as well, which is really nice because we have similar things to relate on.
And also buy Nigerian foods from halal shops around, and there are lots of halal shops around. You just need to find the one that's closest to you.
Also the student union also makes a good effort of trying to cater to students' social needs. So you can go to the student union and sit there in the bar with your friends, or you can go to the club at night.
Everything is so close together. It's either 20 minutes walk away or like a 15-minute bus ride.
I think I made the absolute best decision. I was really, really scared about coming here. I was not sure. I'd never been to Scotland before. And actually coming here and seeing what it was like and meeting people who are like me and meeting like professors who are willing to help, and even like students, other students, older students who were like just being really helpful. So I think I really made the best decision.
I do love the city. Like whenever I go to anywhere else in the UK, I'm always like, I can't wait to go back to Dundee just because of how much I like it here.